Captain Marcus Hale awakened to the hissing of his suit's emergency respiratory system. Pain throbbed along his left side where plasma fire had melted through the outermost layer of his combat armor. Through the cracked visor of his helmet, he could see the twisted ruins of what had once been the Hermes orbital mining facility, now crashed and burning across the surface of Aurelia Prime. The smell of scorched metal and ozone-laced air burned his nostrils as he disengaged the damaged helmet and set it aside. Standing shakily, he surveyed the battlefield. Bodies lay scattered across the rocky terrain, his squad, his friends. The mission had been straightforward: retrieve critical intelligence from the facility's data core, then destroy the structure to prevent Aetheri forces from accessing Earth's mining algorithms. What they hadn't anticipated was the explosive countermeasures. "Command, this is Hale," he rasped into his wristcom, wincing as static crackled back. "Strike team is down. Repeat, strike team is down. I'm the sole survivor at the Hermes crash site. Request immediate extraction." After several seconds of white noise, a familiar voice broke through. "Captain Hale, this is General Sato. Extraction is not possible at this time. Aetheri forces have established orbital dominance. Your primary mission remains secure. The algorithm data, then destroy any remaining hardware." Hale squinted at the crimson sky above, where twin moons hung like watchful eyes amid the scatter of debris from the morning space battle. 10 years of war with the Aetheri had reduced humanity's foothold in this system to a handful of contested outposts. The crystalline deposits that powered both species' faster-than-light drives had turned Aurelia Prime from an unremarkable frontier planet into the most valuable real estate in 3 sectors. He checked his weapon plasma rifle, still functional, though the charge indicator showed barely 30% capacity. Enough for a fighting retreat, not enough to hold a position. The data core would be in the central processing hub, if it had survived the crash at all. Stepping carefully through the wreckage, Hale noted the strange beauty that persisted even amid destruction. Glowing crystal shards were embedded in the twisted metal, pulsing with inner light. Delicate alien spores drifted on thermal currents, their luminescent trails creating ephemeral patterns in the air. And throughout the debris field stood carved obelisks of black stone, Aetheri monuments, their surfaces etched with symbols he couldn't begin to decipher. The Aetheri themselves remained a mystery even after a decade of brutal conflict. Humanity knew they were tall, humanoid, but not human, with 4 arms and iridescent skin that shimmered like oil on water. They revered the crystals as sacred, while humans valued them only for their energy potential. The rest, their society, their beliefs, their true intentions, remained locked behind a wall of mutual hostility. Hale picked his way through the destroyed command center, discovering the data core miraculously intact. As he connected his portable drive to download the algorithms, a sudden silence fell over the battlefield. The distant sounds of skirmishes and weapons fire simply stopped. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. In combat, unexpected silence never heralded anything good. He was halfway to shelter when he felt a ripple in the air, a disturbance in the planet's anti-gravity field. Looking up, Hale witnessed a massive shadow sliding across the ground as an Aetheri sky arc materialized from behind a stealth field. The vessel was magnificent and terrifying, a cathedral-like structure of living crystal and polished metal that seemed to sing as it descended toward the battlefield. "Command," Hale whispered into his comm. "We have Aetheri leadership presence. Repeat, Aetheri leadership is on site." General Sato's voice was tense. "Can you confirm class of vessel?" "It's a sky arc, the big one, ornate, probably royal." "Stand by for new orders, Captain." Sato responded, his voice suddenly cool and calculating. The sky arc settled 100 meters away, hovering just above the ground. A section of its crystalline hull shimmered and dissolved, revealing an interior chamber aglow with blue-white light. A platform extended outward, and upon it stood a figure that made Hale's breath catch. She was clearly Aetheri, but unlike any he had seen in combat footage or intelligence briefings. taller than the warriors with skin that shimmered between deep purple and midnight blue. Instead of battle armor, she wore what appeared to be living crystal, shaped into an elegant exoskeleton that framed her forearms and elongated torso. Her face was unexpectedly expressive, with large eyes that gleamed like polished silver. Behind Hale, the surviving human soldiers emerged from various positions in the wreckage. Across the field, Aetheri warriors lowered their plasma glaives, but remained alert, their postures conveying both deference to the new arrival and readiness to resume combat. The tall Aetheri stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice carried effortlessly across the battlefield in perfect, basic universal. "Captain Marcus Hale," she said, her voice musical, yet authoritative. Hale stiffened. She knew his name. How could she possibly know his name? "I am Queen Elena of the Aetheri Dominion," she continued. "I propose marriage. Accept, and the war ends. Refuse, and the war continues." The silence that followed was absolute. Hale's mind raced, certain he had misheard or misunderstood. Marriage to an alien queen, as a peace treaty. His comm unit exploded with frantic chatter. General Sato's voice, cutting through the rest, "Captain, this is a tactical opportunity. Either detonate the remaining charges to eliminate the queen, or accept and secure her as a high-value asset." Another officer broke protocol to interject. "This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. A peaceful resolution." Sato's voice hardened. "That is not your call to make, Lieutenant. Captain Hale, your orders are clear." But were they? Hale stared at Queen Elena, whose silver eyes regarded him with what appeared to be calm expectation. Behind her, the Aetheri warriors awaited her command. Behind him, human soldiers looked to him for direction. 10 years of war hung in the balance, and, somehow incomprehensibly, he stood at the fulcrum. "I request terms and clarification," he called out, buying time, while his racing mind attempted to process this bizarre turn of events. Queen Elena nodded, as though she had anticipated his response. "You will accompany me aboard the Royal Skyark. You will participate in the 3 rites of union. If you complete them with sincerity, our nations will enter formal alliance through our marriage. The mining rights to the crystal deposits will be shared equally." "And if I refuse?" "Then I depart and the battle resumes. The war continues until one of our species is exterminated or exhausted beyond recovery." She tilted her head slightly. "Do you require time to consider?" Hale's comm buzzed again. General Sato's voice was urgent. "Captain, this is clearly a trap. Detonate the charges now while their leadership is exposed." But something in Elena's steady gaze made Hale hesitate. Was this truly a trap? Or was it possible that the Aetheri, with their ritual-driven culture, saw marriage as the most binding form of peace treaty? What if this absurd proposal was actually sincere? "I accept your invitation to discuss terms aboard your vessel," Hale said carefully, not quite accepting the proposal, but not rejecting it either. "I will participate in your rites of union to better understand what you're offering." Queen Elena's expression remained unreadable to his human eyes, but she inclined her head in what might have been satisfaction. "Approach Captain Marcus Hale of Earth." As Hale stepped forward, his comm unit erupted with General Sato's voice. "Captain, you are directly violating orders. This is treason." With a decisive motion, Hale switched off his communications device. If this was humanity's one chance at peace, no matter how strange the terms, he would not let it slip away without exploration. He had seen enough death to last several lifetimes. The platform beneath Queen Elena extended further, creating a bridge between the Sky Ark and the battlefield. Hale walked forward, acutely aware of the weapons trained on him from both sides. The metal and crystal beneath his boots hummed with energy, almost like a living thing responding to his footsteps. As he reached the Queen, he noticed she was nearly 2 meters tall, forcing him to look up to meet her gaze. Up close, her crystalline exoskeleton was even more elaborate than he had initially thought, with intricate patterns that seemed to flow like liquid while remaining solid. "You show courage, Captain," she said, her voice lower now that they stood face to face. "It is an auspicious beginning." Before Hale could respond, the platform began to retract, drawing them into the Skyark's interior. The last thing he saw before the hull sealed behind them was the astonished faces of his fellow soldiers, frozen in a tableau of confusion and hope. Inside the Skyark, Hale found himself in a chamber unlike anything in human architecture. The walls pulsed with light that seemed to flow like blood through veins. The ceiling arched high above, creating the impression of a cathedral built from living crystal. The temperature was warmer than human preference, but not uncomfortable, and the air carried a faint scent of something like cinnamon and ozone. "You will be escorted to quarters prepared for human physiology," Queen Elena stated. "Tomorrow the first rite will commence." A smaller Aetheri appeared at Hale's side, their skin a paler blue than the Queen's, with intricate markings around their eyes that might have indicated rank or status. "I am Lyrix," they said with a slight bow. "I serve as the Queen's voice when she is occupied with matters of state. I will be your guide during the 3 rites." As Queen Elena departed in a swirl of crystalline armor, Hale turned to Lyrix. "I have questions." Lyrix's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "I would be disappointed if you didn't, human. Walking into the heart of your enemy's stronghold, based on a marriage proposal that appeared out of nowhere. Questions seem the minimum requirement for sanity." The unexpected sarcasm caught Hale off guard. "You speak basic universal very well. As the Queen's voice, I speak 17 languages fluently, including 3 human dialects. Your surprise reveals much about how little your people understand mine, despite a decade of trying to kill each other." Hale couldn't argue with that assessment. "Why marriage, why me?" Lyrix gestured for Hale to follow as they walked deeper into the vessel. "The Queen will explain her reasons during the rites. As for why you specifically, you were the ranking officer in the field whose name we could confirm. Had General Sato been present, the proposal would have been directed to him." Somehow, the thought of the stern General Sato receiving a marriage proposal from an alien queen almost made Hale laugh, despite the gravity of the situation. "And these rites, what should I expect?" "The 3 rites of union are sacred traditions that predate our expansion to the stars," Lyrix explained as they passed chambers filled with Aetheri going about incomprehensible tasks. They are designed to establish compatibility, trust, and shared purpose between potential mates. "I'm not sure how compatible our species can be," Hale pointed out. Lyrix made a sound that might have been a snort. "The union would be diplomatic, not biological, Captain. Though your discomfort is noted and somewhat amusing." They arrived at a doorway that slid open at Lyrix's approach. Inside was a chamber that had clearly been modified for human use, with furniture proportioned to human dimensions and lighting adjusted to human visual comfort. "These will be your quarters. Food appropriate for human consumption will be provided. Rest. The first rite begins after the twin dawn." As Lyrix turned to leave, Hale called out, "How do I know this isn't an elaborate trap?" The Aetheri paused. "You don't. Just as we don't know that your acceptance isn't a ploy to assassinate our queen. That is the nature of trust, Captain. It begins with uncertainty and risk." With that, they departed, leaving Hale alone in the alien chamber. Sleep eluded him that night despite the surprising comfort of the accommodations. His mind raced with questions and possibilities. Was this truly a path to peace? Or was he being manipulated for some purpose he couldn't yet see? And if this was sincere, what would it mean to be the human consort to an alien queen? Morning, or what passed for it aboard the Skyark, came with a soft chiming sound and a gradual brightening of the chamber's illumination. Lyrix arrived as Hale was finishing a meal of something resembling fruit and protein that tasted better than standard military rations. "The first rite awaits," Lyrix announced. "The trial of memory in the Hall of Echoes." Hale followed Lyrix through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked the living crystal architecture rearranging itself in subtle ways. They entered a vast chamber where the walls were composed of thousands of small, crystalline facets, each reflecting light differently. Queen Elena awaited them standing in the center of the chamber. She had changed her attire. The crystalline exoskeleton now incorporated flowing elements that resembled fabric but moved with a liquid grace. "Captain Marcus Hale," she greeted him. "The first rite requires an exchange of memories. To consider union, we must first understand the paths that have brought us to this moment." Hale tensed. "You want to read my mind?" "Not precisely," the Queen clarified. "The Hall of Echoes allows for the sharing of specific memories chosen voluntarily by each participant. I will share a memory with you, and you will share one with me. The crystals serve as conduits translating experience across the barriers of different neurological structures." Hale glanced at Lyrics, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "The process is non-invasive," the aide added. "You retain control of which memory is shared." After a moment's hesitation, Hale nodded. "What do I need to do?" Queen Elena gestured to a crystal formation that rose from the floor. "Place your hand upon the resonator and focus on the memory you wish to share." Hale approached the crystal cautiously. It hummed beneath his touch, warm and vibrating slightly. What memory should he choose? Something that would communicate humanity's desires, his own character. Almost unbidden, a memory surfaced not of battle or heroism, but of his childhood on Earth. He was 10 years old, playing in the forest near his home in the Pacific Northwest. He had found a wounded eagle, its wing broken, likely from hitting a power line. Despite his fear of the powerful beak and talons, young Marcus had carefully wrapped the bird in his jacket and carried it 3 miles to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. As the memory crystallized in his mind, the faceted walls of the chamber began to glow. Suddenly, the scene projected around them, not as a flat image, but as a fully immersive environment. Hale could smell the pine trees, feel the weight of the injured eagle in his arms, and experience again the mixture of fear and determination that had driven him forward. The memory played through to its conclusion, the rehabilitator taking the eagle, praising young Marcus for his courage, and later sending a video of the healed bird being released back into the wild. When it faded, Hale felt oddly vulnerable, as though he had revealed more about himself than intended. Queen Elena's silver eyes studied him with new interest. "You risked injury to save a creature that could not repay you. This speaks to your character." Before Hale could respond, she placed her own hand upon the crystal. The chamber transformed again this time into an alien landscape of crystal spires and atmospheric phenomena Hale had no names for. In the memory, a younger Elena stood beside another Etheri slightly taller and with deeper blue skin. "My sister Talira," the Queen's voice narrated as the memory unfolded. "Former Queen of the Etheri." The memory showed a ceremony of some kind with thousands of Etheri gathered. Talira placed what appeared to be a living crown upon Elena's head, then addressed her people. Though Hale couldn't understand the words, the emotional resonance translated clearly: pride, sadness, resolution. "She abdicated," Hale asked. "She died," Elena corrected. "This was her final public act, naming me as successor before the illness took her completely. She could have lived longer, but chose to transfer power while her mind remained clear." The memory shifted to a more private scene, Elena alone with her sister, in what appeared to be a medical chamber. Talira spoke earnestly, her 4 hands clasping Elena's, in what was clearly a moment of intense emotion. "She made me promise to find a way to end the conflict with humans," Elena's voice explained as the memory played out. "She believed our mutual destruction was inevitable unless we found common ground. Her last act as queen was to order our scientists to study human culture, seeking a path to peace." As the memory faded, Hale found himself deeply moved by the intimate glimpse into Etheri life and the weight of responsibility that had been placed on Elena's shoulders. "Your sister was wise," he said quietly. "Too many have died in this war already." "Yes," Elena agreed. "And now you understand why I have chosen this path." Marriage between ruling houses has been used throughout Aetheri history to end conflicts and merge disparate interests. When our researchers discovered similar practices in human history, I saw the possibility. Hale considered this. It was true that royal marriages had been used as diplomatic tools throughout human history, though the practice had largely died out with the decline of monarchies. The concept wasn't entirely alien, just unexpected in an interstellar context. "The first rite is complete," Queen Elena declared. "You have shown sincerity in your sharing, Captain Hale. Tomorrow the second rite will test our harmony." As Lyrax led Hale back to his quarters, the aide seemed more forthcoming. "The Queen was impressed by your choice of memory," they remarked. "Many humans might have chosen to show strength in battle or technological prowess." "I wanted to show that humans value life," Hale responded. "Even the lives of creatures different from ourselves." Lyrax made a sound that might have been laughter. "A pointed message delivered with subtlety. Perhaps you have diplomatic instincts after all, Captain." That night, as Hale lay awake processing the day's events, his thoughts kept returning to Queen Elena's memory. The grief in her eyes as she watched her sister transfer power, the weight of promise that had shaped her actions since it humanized her, in a way that years of military intelligence never had. The Aetheri had been presented to him as implacable enemies, religious fanatics defending their sacred crystals. Now he was beginning to see them as people with loves and losses and complex motivations. The second rite began after another night of fitful sleep. This time, Lyrax led Hale to what appeared to be an airlock. "The test of harmony takes place in the living grove," the aide explained, handing Hale what looked like a thin crystal disk. "Place this on your temple. It will help translate the grove's responses." "Responses?" Hale questioned. "What exactly will be responding to me?" Lyrax's expression was unreadable. "The living grove is a biological extension of our ship. It responds to emotional states and intentions. Think of it as a lie detector, though. That simplification hardly does it justice." The airlock cycled, and Hale found himself stepping into what appeared to be a forest impossibly contained within the sky arc. Trees with translucent trunks stretched toward a ceiling that perfectly mimicked a sky complete with passing clouds. The ground beneath his feet was covered in moss-like growth that sparkled with tiny crystals. Queen Elena awaited him in a clearing, seated on a formation that might have been a bench or might have been a living part of the environment. She gestured for him to join her. "The test of harmony will measure our emotional resonance," she explained, once he was seated. "The grove responds to feelings, it amplifies them and makes them visible." As if on cue, the trees around them began to pulse with subtle light, their translucent trunks taking on a faint blue glow. "Currently, the grove reflects curiosity and caution from both of us," Elena noted. "For the test to be successful, we must move through more complex emotional landscapes together." "How?" "Through truth. What do you fear most about this potential union, Captain Hale?" The directness of the question startled him. As he considered his answer, he noticed the trees shifting in color, taking on a purplish hue. "I fear being used," he admitted finally. "I fear that this proposal is a strategy rather than a sincere offer. And I fear what will happen to my people if I make the wrong choice." The trees pulsed more intensely, and tendrils of luminescence began to spread through the moss at their feet. "These are honest fears," Elena acknowledged. "The grove recognizes truth." She paused, then offered her own vulnerability. "I fear that your human command will use this opportunity to strike at me. I fear that even if you are sincere, your people will reject any peace brokered through our union. And I fear failing my sister's final wish." The forest around them responded dramatically to their exchange, the trees now glowing with a golden light that seemed to connect them in a web of illumination. "Now," Elena continued, "what angers you most about this war?" The question penetrated to a place Hale usually kept, carefully walled off. As he allowed himself to consider it, the grove shifted again, tendrils of red light spreading through the canopy above. "The waste," he said, his voice rough with emotion. The pointless deaths. The way both sides have demonized each other to justify atrocities. The fact that we could have found a way to share these resources a decade ago, if anyone had truly tried. As he spoke, images seemed to form in the translucent trunks of the trees, reflections of memories he hadn't consciously summoned. The faces of soldiers he'd lost, planets reduced to battlefields, the hollow expressions of refugees displaced by the conflict. Yes, Elena said quietly, and Hale realized the trees were showing her memories as well. Aetheri casualties destroyed habitats, the grief of survivors. This is what I hope to find in you, Captain. Not bloodlust disguised as duty, but recognition of the futility of our conflict. For hours they continued this exchange, moving through emotions both painful and hopeful. Grief gave way to determination, fear transformed into possibility. Throughout it all, the living grove responded, creating a visual symphony of their emotional journey. When they finally stood to leave, Hale realized something profound had occurred. He had shared things with this alien queen that he had never articulated to another human being. And in her responses, he had glimpsed a mind that, while undeniably alien in some ways, resonated with his own in its desire for resolution. The second rite is complete, Elena declared. Tomorrow the final test, the puzzle of deception. That evening, Hale's quarters received an unexpected visitor. General Sato's face appeared on a communication screen that materialized on one wall. Captain Hale, the general's voice was cold. I see you've managed to reactivate communications. General, Hale acknowledged, surprised. The Aetheri have allowed this connection. They claim it's a gesture of good faith, Sato replied, skepticism evident in his tone. I want a status report. Are you being coerced? Is this marriage proposal legitimate, or a ploy to extract intelligence? Hale considered his words carefully. I believe the offer is sincere, sir. I've undergone 2 of their traditional rites, which appear designed to establish mutual understanding. The Aetheri Queen seems genuinely interested in ending the conflict. Sato's expression hardened. Captain, I need to be certain your judgment hasn't been compromised. Our intelligence suggests the Aetheri may be using psychotropic compounds or psychic influence. The timing of this proposal coincides with our discovery of a new crystal deposit that could turn the tide of the war. Something in the general's tone made Hale uneasy. Sir, with respect, I've seen no evidence of coercion. This could be our opportunity to end the bloodshed. Your idealism is noted, Captain, Sato replied. However, I have a responsibility to consider all strategic angles. If this alien queen is sincere, her presence aboard that vessel represents an unprecedented opportunity. Opportunity, sir. To decapitate the Aetheri leadership, Sato stated flatly. A surgical strike that could end this war on our terms. Hale felt a chill run through him. General, I strongly advise against any offensive action while peace negotiations are underway. Your advice is noted, Captain. Continue with these rites. We'll speak again. The communication ended abruptly, leaving Hale deeply troubled. Could he trust Sato's intentions? The general had always been a hardliner, advocating for military solutions over diplomatic ones. The thought that Earth's command might be planning to use his presence on the Sky Ark as cover for an assassination attempt was deeply disturbing. Sleep eluded him entirely that night. The third rite. The puzzle of deception took place in a chamber, lyrics called the Truth Nexus. 3 pedestals stood in the center of the room, each supporting a crystal that appeared identical to the others, perfect dodecahedrons that pulsed with inner light. Queen Elena awaited him, and Hale noted she wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor, more elaborate and formal than her previous attire. The final test is simple in concept, but challenging in execution, she explained. Before you are 3 sentient crystals. 1 always speaks truth. 1 always speaks falsehood. 1 alternates between truth and falsehood. You must determine which is which by asking questions. Hale approached the pedestals, studying the identical crystals. They can speak. As if in response, the crystals illuminated more brightly, and a voice emanated from the one on the left. "I am the truth teller," it said in a melodic tone. The center crystal glowed next. "The crystal on my left is the liar," it stated. The right crystal spoke last. "I alternate between truth and lies," it claimed. Hale smiled despite himself. This was a logic puzzle familiar from his academy training. "I am allowed to ask questions." "3 questions," Elena confirmed. "Choose wisely." Hale considered the problem. The standard approach would be to ask each crystal about the nature of another, creating a matrix of responses that would reveal their identities. But something told him this test was about more than just logical reasoning. He directed his first question to the center crystal. "If I asked you whether Queen Elena sincerely desires peace, what would you answer?" The crystal pulsed for a moment before responding. "I would say yes, she desires peace above all else." "Interesting." Hale turned to the crystal on the right. "What would the center crystal say if I asked whether humans and Etheri can coexist peacefully?" The right crystal brightened. "It would say no coexistence is impossible." For his final question, Hale addressed the left crystal. "If I asked you whether trust between our species is possible despite our history of conflict, what would you say?" The left crystal glowed intensely. "I would say trust is always a choice, not a certainty. It is possible if we choose to make it so." Hale stepped back and considered the responses carefully. Each answer revealed something about the nature of the crystal, but also addressed deeper questions about the peace process itself. This wasn't just a test of logic. It was a test of his ability to discern genuine intent. "I believe," he said finally, "that the left crystal alternates between truth and lies, and just spoke truth. The center crystal always lies, and the right crystal always tells the truth." Queen Elena's expression remained neutral. "And how did you reach this conclusion?" Hale explained his reasoning, detailing the logical contradictions in their statements that led to his answer. As he finished, all 3 crystals glowed simultaneously, their light merging into a single beam that illuminated both him and the Queen. "The puzzle of deception has been solved," Elena declared. "But more importantly, you sought answers beyond the puzzle itself. You questioned our intentions, the possibility of peace, the nature of trust. These are the questions that matter." The crystals dimmed, and Elena approached Hale. "The 3 rites are complete. You have shown memory harmony and discernment. I ask you formally now, Captain Marcus Hale, will you accept union with me to end the conflict between our peoples?" Before Hale could respond, lyrics burst into the chamber, their usually composed demeanor visibly shaken. "My Queen," they said urgently, "we have intercepted encrypted communications from the human fleet. They are deploying a strike team to the Sky Arc. Their mission parameters include your assassination and a device to destabilize our crystal core." Hale felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath him. General Sato had decided to proceed with the attack, using his presence as cover. The fragile trust he had been building with Elena was about to be shattered by his own people. Queen Elena's silver eyes fixed on him suddenly cold. "Is this your answer, Captain A, pretense of peace, while your forces prepare to strike?" "No," Hale said firmly. "I knew nothing of this. General Sato contacted me last night but gave no indication of immediate action." He turned to Lyrics. "How long until they arrive?" "The strike team has already boarded through a maintenance access point," Lyrics replied. "Our sensors detected them moments ago. They appear to be heading for the crystal core." Hale made his decision in an instant. "I need a weapon and directions to the core. I'll stop them." Elena studied him intently. "Why would you move against your own people?" "Because they're wrong," Hale stated simply. "Because we have a chance for peace, and I won't let anyone human or Etheri destroy that chance." After a moment's deliberation, Elena nodded to Lyrics, who handed Hale a compact Etheri weapon. "It is calibrated for human use," the aide explained. "Similar to your plasma rifles, but more focused." "The core chamber is 3 levels down," Elena added. "Lyrics will guide you. I must secure our defenses in case this attack is more extensive than it appears." As they hurried through the corridors of the Sky Ark, Hale felt a strange clarity. For 10 years, he had fought for Earth, believing in the righteousness of the human claim to the crystal resources. Now, he found himself running to prevent a human attack, driven by the conviction that peace, even peace brokered through an unconventional alliance, was worth fighting for. The crystal core of the Sky Ark was a massive chamber dominated by a central pillar of pure crystal that pulsed with blinding light. Energy conduits extended from it, like the spokes of a wheel feeding power to the rest of the vessel. The air hummed with potential, making Hale's skin tingle as he entered. And there, at the base of the core, were 4 figures in Earth Alliance stealth suits, working to attach a device to the main power conduit. Lieutenant Rayner, Hale called out, recognizing the team leader. The figures spun, weapons raised, then hesitated as they recognized him. "Captain Hale." Rayner replied, his voice distorted by his helmet speaker. "We're here to extract you. Step away from the alien." Lyrics had taken position behind a crystal formation, their own weapon trained on the human team. "There will be no extraction," Hale stated firmly. "And no assassination. Lower your weapons and remove that device from the core." Rayner's posture stiffened. "Sir, with respect, those aren't our orders." General Sato was explicit. "We take out the Queen, destabilize the core, and extract you during the chaos." "I'm countermanding those orders, Lieutenant. This Sky Ark contains thousands of Aetheri civilians, not just warriors. That device will kill them all." "That's the point, sir," another soldier interjected. "One strike to end the war." Hale raised his weapon. "That's not how the war ends. Not today. Final warning, stand down." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Rayner sighed. "Can't do that, Captain. General Sato said you might be compromised. We have override authorization." He nodded to one of his team, who pressed a sequence on the device attached to the core. Lights began to flash on the device, a countdown initiated. Hale fired his shot, striking the device with precision. Sparks erupted from it, but the countdown continued. The strike team returned fire, forcing Hale and Lyrics to take cover behind crystal formations. "The device is shielded," Lyrics called out. "Direct energy weapons won't disable it." Hale assessed the situation rapidly. 4 trained soldiers versus himself and Lyrics, with seconds ticking away on a device that would destabilize the entire Sky Ark. The odds were poor. "Cover me," he told Lyrics, then launched himself toward the core in a desperate charge. Plasma fire sizzled past him as he ran, scoring hits on his armor that he felt as bursts of searing pain. He ignored it, focused entirely on reaching the device. Lyrics provided covering fire, their shots precise enough to keep the strike team distracted without hitting the sensitive core itself. Reaching the device, Hale saw it was standard Earth Alliance military issue, which meant it had a manual override. As he worked to disengage it, Lieutenant Rayner rushed him, combat knife drawn. "Don't make me do this, Captain," Rayner warned. Hale met his gaze through the helmet visor. "We were supposed to be peacekeepers, Rayner. When did we become executioners?" His words gave the lieutenant pause, just enough time for Hale to complete the override sequence. The device powered down, its lights fading. The moment of relief was short-lived. One of the other soldiers took aim at Hale, finger tightening on the trigger. Before the shot could be fired, crystal spikes erupted from the floor, encasing the soldier in a translucent prison. Throughout the chamber, the crystal structures were responding, shifting, and flowing like liquid, suddenly given purpose. The strike team found themselves surrounded by moving crystal that solidified into restraints. Queen Elena entered the chamber, flanked by Aetheri guards. "The Sky Ark protects itself," she explained, approaching the immobilized humans. "And it protects those who protect it." She turned to Hale, who was slumped against the core pillar, blood seeping from wounds where plasma fire had penetrated his armor. "You chose peace over loyalty to your command," she observed. "You risked your life to prevent an atrocity." Hale looked up at her, suddenly exhausted. "I chose what was right. There's been enough death already." Elena knelt beside him, placing a cool hand against his wounded side. The crystal elements in her armor seemed to flow, extending to cover his injury. A numbing sensation spread through him, dulling the pain. "Medical assistance is coming," she assured him. "But first, there is something you should know." She gestured to Lyrix, who activated a communication panel. On the display that shimmered into existence, Hale saw the space above Aurelia Prime. A second human fleet had arrived, reinforcements, responding to General Sato's plan. "We have minutes before they begin an orbital assault," Elena stated. "Having failed in their covert operation, they will resort to direct force." Hale struggled to his feet, leaning on the core pillar for support. "Let me speak to them. Let me try to stop this before it goes any further." Elena studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Lyrix established a communication channel to the human fleet. When the connection was made, Hale found himself facing Admiral Chen, the overall commander of Earth's forces in the sector. The Admiral's expression shifted from determination to surprise when he recognized Hale. "Captain, we received reports you were being held hostage." "Those reports are false," Admiral Hale stated firmly. "I am here as a diplomatic envoy. Queen Elena of the Etherii has offered terms for peace, generous terms that would end this conflict and allow for shared access to the crystal resources." Chen frowned. "Captain General Sato informed us that the Etherii were using some form of mind control. General Sato attempted to use my presence here as cover for an assassination and an attack that would have killed thousands of civilian Etherii." Hale interrupted. "I prevented that attack because I believe peace is possible. I'm asking you to hold your forces and consider the alternative to more bloodshed." The Admiral's frown deepened. "You expect me to take the word of one captain over a general?" "I expect you to consider the possibility that ending this war without further loss of life might be worth exploring," Hale replied. "The Etherii are not the religious fanatics our intelligence painted them as. They're people with their own civilization, their own values, their own losses in this conflict." Queen Elena stepped into view of the communication panel. "Admiral Chen of Earth, I extend to you the same offer I made to Captain Hale. A formal alliance through diplomatic union, with equal sharing of the crystal resources that have driven our conflict. I invite you to send representatives to discuss terms." The Admiral seemed taken aback by the alien queen's direct address. "You're proposing marriage as a peace treaty." "I am proposing an end to a war that has cost both our peoples dearly," Elena replied. "The form of that agreement follows Etherii tradition, but can be adapted to satisfy human diplomatic requirements as well." Admiral Chen was silent for a long moment, clearly wrestling with the unexpected turn of events. Finally, he nodded. "I will hold our forces and consult with Earth Command. In the meantime, I accept your invitation to send representatives for preliminary discussions." When the communication ended, Hale nearly collapsed from relief and his injuries. Etherii medics arrived, transferring him to their equivalent of a stretcher. "You've done enough, Captain," Elena told him, as they prepared to move him to a medical chamber. "Rest now." "Did I just propose peace to an admiral?" Hale asked, his thoughts becoming hazy, as some form of Etherii anesthetic took effect. Elena's expression might have been a smile. "You did considerably more than that, Marcus Hale. You chose to believe in possibility over certainty. It is a rare quality in times of war." The days that followed passed in a blur of healing and diplomacy. Hale's injuries were treated with Etherii medical technology that accelerated recovery to a degree human medicine couldn't match. As he regained his strength, he found himself increasingly involved in the negotiations between human and Etherii representatives. General Sato had been relieved of command pending an investigation into his unauthorized actions. Admiral Chen, initially skeptical, had become cautiously optimistic about the peace process after witnessing the advanced Etherii civilization firsthand. The Hall of Concord aboard the Skyark became the center of negotiations. Human and Etherii envoys sat across from each other at a crystalline table that seemed to amplify moments of agreement and dim during points of contention. Hale found himself in the unprecedented position of being both Earth representative and prospective consort to the Etherii Queen. The dual role granted him unique perspective and influence in the talks. The mining algorithms you were sent to retrieve, he explained to the human delegation, were developed by the Etherii to extract crystals without damaging their regenerative capabilities. That's why they were so protective of the deposits, not just for religious reasons but practical ones. Improper mining techniques would render the crystals non-renewable. Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully. And with these algorithms we could ensure sustainable harvesting. Precisely, Queen Elena confirmed. The crystals are sacred to us, but we recognize their practical value to both our species. What we could not accept was their destruction through improper extraction. Gradually, the framework of a peace treaty took shape. The crystal deposits would be jointly managed with extraction techniques, following Etherii guidelines. A portion of the harvest would be set aside for ceremonial purposes, while the remainder would be divided equally between the two species. The most controversial aspect remained the proposed union between Hale and Queen Elena. Earth's representatives were uncomfortable with the concept of a diplomatic marriage, viewing it as archaic and potentially exploitative. Captain Hale is being asked to sacrifice his personal autonomy for political purposes, one negotiator argued. This goes against Earth Alliance principles of individual rights. Hale, who had been listening silently, finally spoke up. With respect, I'm not being asked to sacrifice anything. I'm being offered an opportunity to serve as a bridge between our species. After witnessing the destruction this war has caused, I consider that a privilege, not a burden. Queen Elena regarded him with those silver eyes that he had come to read more easily over time. There was approval there, and something deeper, a genuine respect that transcended their cultural differences. The union ceremony can be adapted to honor both our traditions, she suggested. It need not follow all the conventions of an Etherii royal marriage, but can preserve the symbolic importance while respecting Captain Hale's autonomy. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The diplomatic union would proceed as a central symbol of the peace accord, but with carefully negotiated terms that satisfied both human concerns about individual rights and Etherii traditions of binding alliances. On the day of the ceremony, the Sky Ark hovered above a plateau on Aurelia Prime, its crystal architecture gleaming in the light of the twin suns. Representatives from both species gathered in a vast chamber that had been reconfigured to accommodate the historic event. Hale stood at the entrance dressed in a uniform that combined elements of Earth Alliance formal attire with Etherii ceremonial designs. The wounds from the core chamber confrontation had healed, leaving only faint scars as reminders. Lyrics approached their expression as close to smiling as Hale had ever seen. "Nervous, Captain?" "Oddly, no," Hale replied truthfully. 10 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be entering a diplomatic marriage with an alien queen to end an interstellar war, I'd have questioned their sanity. Now, it feels like the most rational decision I've ever made. Lyrics made the sound, Hale now recognized as laughter. "You continue to surprise me, human. Perhaps there is hope for your species after all." The ceremony itself was unlike anything in human or Etherii tradition, a new ritual created specifically for this unprecedented alliance. As Hale and Queen Elena exchanged vows of partnership and peace, the living architecture of the chamber responded, crystal formations blossoming like flowers, catching and refracting light in complex patterns. Human drones hovered in geometric formations, projecting images of Earth and Etherii worlds, side by side. Etherii musicians played instruments that created harmonies impossible for human ears to fully comprehend, yet undeniably beautiful. The symbolic exchange of rings had been adapted to incorporate Etherii tradition. Instead of simple bands, they exchanged living crystal formations that adjusted to the wearer's physiology, a marvel of Etherii bioengineering that symbolized adaptability and growth. When the ceremony concluded, the gathered crowds, both human and Etherii, released thousands of bioluminescent lanterns into the Aurelian sky. Earth's diplomatic corps had contributed mechanical peace doves that flew in formation among the lanterns, their wings reflecting the colorful light. Hours later, when the formal celebrations had given way to more relaxed intercultural mingling, Hale found Queen Elena, now his partner, in the most unusual diplomatic arrangement in human history, on the observation deck of the Sky Ark. She stood silhouetted against the vast panorama of Aurelia Prime, the twin moons rising over a landscape that, for the first time in a decade, was not scarred by fresh combat. "Do you regret your decision?" she asked, as he joined her at the viewport. Hale shook his head. "No, it was the right choice, though I suspect we've only begun the real work of building peace." "Indeed," she agreed. "Treaties are easily made and easily broken. True understanding requires constant effort." "What comes next?" he asked, genuinely curious about their path forward. His role as consort to the Etherii Queen was unprecedented, with no guidelines or historical examples to follow. Elena turned to him, the crystal elements in her ceremonial attire catching the moonlight. "We build a future neither of us imagined," she said simply. "One where difference enriches, rather than divides. One where we recognize that beneath our alien exteriors, we share the same fundamental desires: safety, prosperity, meaning." Hale looked out at the peaceful landscape below, where human and Etherii settlements would soon exist side by side. "Not a bad outcome for a mission that started with me trying to steal mining algorithms and blow up a facility." "The universe has a peculiar sense of humor," Elena observed, "and occasionally wisdom beyond our understanding." As they stood together, watching the double moons rise, Hale reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. From soldier to diplomat, from enemy to partner, from certainty to possibility. The path ahead was uncharted, but for the first time in a decade, it held the promise of creation rather than destruction. Somewhere in the distance, the last of the ceremonial lanterns drifted upward, tiny points of light, reaching toward the stars that both their species had fought so hard to claim. Tonight, at least, those stars looked down on peace.